My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm 32 years old. On what should have been the happiest day of the year, I walked into my parents' home expecting celebration. Instead, I found myself standing before 200 relatives, arranged like jurors in a courtroom, ready to pass judgment on my entire existence. My mother stood at the front of the room and began tearing down every photograph of me from the family wall. One by one, my childhood memories were ripped apart. My father rose with papers in his hand and read aloud a bill for $420,000. Every penny he claimed that I had cost them by simply being born. My sister Amanda stepped forward with a smile that made my blood run cold. She dangled my car keys in front of my face and whispered that Dad had already transferred the title to her name. She needed it more than I did, she said. I could have collapsed right there. I could have begged. I could have apologized for crimes I didn't commit. But I didn't. I turned around and walked out that door without saying a single word. For 4 days afterward they called me. 80, 90, 100 times. But I never answered. And I'm about to tell you exactly why. But first, please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end. Let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. Your support means everything to me. Now let me take you back to the beginning, to where this nightmare truly started. Growing up in the Mitchell family meant understanding one fundamental truth. There were two categories of children, Amanda and everyone else. My father, Robert Mitchell, had built a commercial real estate empire with his bare hands. He was the kind of man who measured a person's worth in dollar signs and square footage. My mother, Catherine, had once been a high school English teacher, but she traded in her red pens for country club memberships and charity galas the moment my father's business took off. And then there was Amanda, 4 years younger than me, blessed with perfect features and even more perfect timing. She could do no wrong. Ever. I remember standing on that stage when I was 16 years old, clutching my acceptance letter for a full academic scholarship to the pre-med program. I was scanning the auditorium, searching desperately for my parents' faces in the crowd. They weren't there. Amanda had a ballet recital that same afternoon. More important, my mother said later, not even bothering to look up from her phone. You understand, don't you, Sarah? I understood, all right. I understood that no matter what I accomplished, it would never be enough. When I graduated from nursing school at 22, at the very top of my class, my mother let out this long, weary sigh. If only you'd studied business like Amanda, she said. Your father would finally have someone worthy to take over the company. It didn't matter that Amanda dropped out of that business program just 2 years later. It didn't matter that I was working 12-hour shifts in the ICU, literally saving lives, while she was maxing out credit cards at boutiques downtown. In my parents' eyes, Amanda walked on water and I was just there. Invisible. Forgettable. Disappointing. My beautiful youngest daughter. My mother would coo at family dinners, running her fingers through Amanda's hair. Then she'd glance at me. Sarah, can't you learn something from your sister? Just once. Oh, I learned plenty. I learned that love in this family came with conditions I could never hope to meet. I learned to make myself smaller, quieter, less. I learned that keeping the peace meant swallowing every hurt, every insult, every moment of being overlooked. I learned to survive by disappearing. But there was one person, just one, who saw me differently. One person who loved me without asking me to change. And that person was about to change the entire trajectory of my life. My grandmother, Eleanor Rose Mitchell, was the only member of my family who ever made me feel like I truly belonged. When I told her I wanted to be a nurse instead of joining my father's real estate company, she didn't frown or sigh or look disappointed. She took both my hands in hers, and her grip was so warm, so steady. Taking care of people, she said, looking directly into my eyes, is the most noble work there is, sweetheart. Don't you let anyone tell you otherwise. 3 years ago, the doctors diagnosed her with stage 4 cancer. They gave her 18 months, maybe 2 years if luck was on her side. My parents immediately started talking about hiring a full-time caregiver. Amanda suggested a nursing home. It would be so much easier, she said, examining her manicure. For everyone. I quit my hospital job that same week. I packed up my apartment, said goodbye to my coworkers, and moved into Grandma's little house on the edge of town. For the next 3 years, I measured out her medications, held her hand through the endless painful nights, and read to her when sleep became impossible. Amanda visited exactly twice during those 3 years. Twice. My parents came by once a month, stayed for 30 minutes maximum, and always left with some urgent excuse about traffic or dinner reservations or business calls. But Grandma Eleanor and I? We had something real. Something precious. She told me stories about my grandfather, about the dreams she'd had when she was young, before life got complicated. She taught me that strength wasn't about fighting back or raising your voice. Real strength, she said, was about knowing your worth even when everyone around you had forgotten it. She passed away 6 months ago, slipping away quietly in her sleep with my hand wrapped around hers. At the funeral, my mother pulled me aside, her face tight with something that might have been anger or might have been grief. "Don't act like you sacrificed so much, Sarah," she hissed. "It's not like she left you anything." I didn't respond. I didn't know yet how catastrophically wrong she was. Because Grandma Eleanor had prepared something. Something my family was already circling like vultures, even though they didn't know the details yet. Something that would expose every ugly truth they'd spent years hiding. The first warning sign came exactly 1 week before my birthday. My phone buzzed while I was finishing a brutal double shift at the hospital where I'd recently returned to work. When I saw Amanda's name on the screen, I actually froze. She never called me. Not for birthdays, not for holidays, not ever. "Sarah." Her voice was strange, too sweet, like honey poured over broken glass. "Have you gotten any mail lately from a lawyer? Something about Grandma's estate." I frowned at the break room wall, my coffee going cold in my hand. "No." "Why?" "Oh, just curious." Pause that lasted too long. "Listen, I've been talking to Mom and Dad. We want to throw you a surprise birthday party. At the house. The whole family." I almost dropped my coffee. In 32 years, my family had never, not once, thrown me a birthday party. Not a single cake, not a single candle. "A party," I repeated. "For me. We want to make things right, Sarah." Her voice dripped with false sincerity. "After everything with Grandma, we've been so distant. It's time to fix that. To bring the family back together." Something flickered in my chest. Hope, maybe. That desperate, foolish kind of hope that refuses to die no matter how many times it gets crushed. My coworker Marcus found me still staring at my phone 10 minutes later. He'd been my closest friend since nursing school, the brother I never had. When I told him about Amanda's call, his face darkened immediately. "Sarah." He set down his clipboard and looked at me hard. "They've never thrown you a birthday party in your entire life. Why would they start now?" "Maybe they feel guilty," I said. "About Grandma. About how I spent 3 years caring for her while they barely visited." "People don't change overnight," Marcus said quietly. "They just get better at hiding their real intentions." I waved him off, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. "You're being paranoid, Marcus." But that night, lying alone in my apartment, I couldn't shake his words. The strange emphasis in Amanda's voice. That weird question about the lawyer. Why would she ask about that? What did any of this have to do with lawyers or estates or Grandma's house? I told myself it was nothing. That maybe, finally, after 32 years, my family wanted to actually be a family. That maybe they'd realized how badly they'd treated me and wanted to make amends. I had absolutely no idea what was really waiting for me. Have you ever ignored red flags because you desperately wanted to believe things would get better? Sometimes our hearts want something so badly that our minds refuse to see the danger right in front of us. But 3 days before that party, I ran into someone who would tell me the truth I wasn't ready to hear. And what she revealed would make everything make horrible, perfect sense. 3 days before the party, I was pushing my shopping cart through the produce section when someone grabbed my arm. I spun around to find Aunt Rebecca, my mother's younger sister. In my family's eyes, Rebecca was the troublemaker, the black sheep. According to my parents, she talked too much and didn't know when to keep quiet. In other words, she told the truth, and my mother couldn't stand it. "Sarah." She was looking around like we were being watched, like she was afraid someone might see us talking. "Do you know about Amanda?" My stomach dropped. "Know what?" Rebecca pulled me behind a display of watermelons, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "She's in serious trouble, Sarah. Bad trouble. She and Kyle invested everything they had in cryptocurrency. Some scheme Kyle's college friend recommended. They lost almost $200,000. I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. 200,000? They're drowning in debt. The bank, friends, family, everyone. Your father's been frantic, trying to find money anywhere he can to bail her out. Rebecca's grip on my arm tightened. Sarah, I shouldn't be telling you this, but you deserve to know. Your family isn't planning a birthday party. They're planning something else entirely. The cheerful grocery store music suddenly sounded sinister. The bright fluorescent lights felt too harsh. What do you mean, something else? Rebecca's eyes met mine, and I saw pity there mixed with fear. I don't know exactly what they're planning, but they've been having secret meetings, all three of them, talking about Grandma's estate, about some house, about money. She released my arm. Please, Sarah, be careful. Something isn't right. She disappeared around the corner before I could ask another question, leaving me alone among the watermelons with my heart pounding in my chest. That night, I finally checked my mailbox. Working night shifts meant I often forgot about physical mail for weeks at a time. Bills were on autopay, everything important came through email. The actual mailbox was something I rarely thought about. But Rebecca's words kept echoing in my head. Grandma's estate. Some house. A lawyer. The envelope was buried underneath credit card offers and grocery store flyers. Thick, cream-colored paper. In the corner, in embossed lettering, Law Offices of Gerald Whitmore, Attorney at Law. I tore it open right there on my front steps, reading by the glow of my phone's flashlight. Dear Miss Mitchell, we respectfully request your presence at our offices to discuss matters pertaining to the estate of Eleanor Rose Mitchell. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to schedule an appointment. My grandmother's house. The little place where I'd spent 3 years caring for her, where she died peacefully in her sleep. I'd assumed it would go to my mother, or maybe be divided equally among the whole family. That's how these things always worked, wasn't it? But this letter was addressed only to me. Just me. I dialed the number with shaking fingers. A receptionist answered on the third ring, professional and polite. After a brief hold, she offered me an appointment for the day after my birthday. I hung up and sat in the darkness, turning that envelope over and over in my hands. Amanda had asked specifically about a lawyer's letter. My parents were planning something involving Grandma's estate. And now this. The pieces were all there, scattered in front of me. I just couldn't quite fit them together yet. I decided to go to the party anyway. Whatever was happening, whatever they were planning, I needed to see it with my own eyes. But I wouldn't walk in completely blind. Not this time. Not ever again. The letter sat on my kitchen counter for the next 2 days. A silent reminder that something was coming. Something I couldn't quite name yet. Sometimes we see all the warning signs but convince ourselves we're wrong. We tell ourselves we're being paranoid, that we're overthinking. But deep down we already know the truth. We're just not ready to face it yet. The night before the party, sleep was impossible. I lay in bed staring at my ceiling, thinking about every single time I'd swallowed my voice to keep the peace. Every insult I'd smiled through. Every moment I'd made myself smaller. When I was 20 years old, my father bought Amanda a brand new BMW for her 16th birthday. Bright red, fully loaded with a bow on top. I'd saved for 3 years to afford my used Honda Civic. Nobody saw anything wrong with this picture. When I pointed it out once, just once, my mother said I was being jealous and immature. When I turned 25, then 26, then 27, my mother forgot my birthday completely. Not a card, not a text, not even a phone call. But Amanda? Amanda got weekend spa trips, surprise shopping sprees, extravagant dinners at expensive restaurants. At Thanksgiving 2 years ago, Amanda announced to the entire table, in front of 20 relatives, that I was just a nurse, because I wasn't smart enough to be a real doctor. Everyone laughed. They actually laughed. I smiled and said nothing, pretending it didn't cut me to the bone. Every single time I stayed silent, I told myself I was being mature, being the bigger person, keeping the family together, preventing drama. But lying there in the dark, I finally understood the truth. Every time I stayed silent to keep their peace, I lost a piece of my own soul. I wasn't being mature. I was disappearing. I thought about what I would lose if I kept this pattern going. More years of being invisible. More holidays spent smiling through cruelty. More moments watching my parents' faces light up for Amanda, while they looked straight through me like I was made of glass. I would lose myself completely. I would dissolve into the background of my own life until there was nothing left at all. I pulled Grandma Eleanor's last letter from my nightstand drawer and read her final words again by the soft glow of my bedside lamp. Live like you deserve to, sweetheart. You are enough. You always were. I pressed that letter to my chest and made myself a promise. Whatever happened at that party tomorrow, whatever nightmare my family had planned, I would not let them define me anymore. I would not shrink. I would not disappear. I would not sacrifice one more piece of my soul to keep their peace. I fell asleep with the letter still clutched in my hand, not knowing that the promise I just made would be tested in less than 24 hours. I woke up the next morning with a strange sense of calm. It was my birthday. I was 32 years old, and I was about to walk into whatever trap my family had set for me. I pulled on a navy blue dress, Grandma Eleanor's favorite color. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. When had I become so tired? When had the light gone out of my eyes? I texted Marcus before leaving. I'm going. Something feels really wrong. His response came immediately. I'm parked 2 blocks from the house. Just in case. Call me if you need me. Good old Marcus. Always preparing for the worst. The driveway was packed when I arrived. Cars lined both sides of the street, spilling onto the neighbor's lawn. Far, far more vehicles than I'd expected for a simple family birthday party. That was my first real warning sign. I should have turned around right then. I stepped through the front door, and the world stopped. The living room had been completely transformed. Rows and rows of folding chairs stretched across the entire space, easily 200 of them, all facing a long table at the far end of the room. It looked like a courtroom, like a trial, like an execution. Every single chair was occupied. I recognized faces from my childhood. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. My parents' business partners. Neighbors from streets we'd lived on decades ago. Even people I'd never met before in my life. Strangers, probably, invited just to fill seats and watch whatever spectacle was about to unfold. No balloons. No birthday cake. No streamers. No decorations at all. Just 200 pairs of eyes, all turning slowly to stare at me in complete silence. Amanda appeared at my elbow like a ghost, her smile too wide, too bright, too sharp. You made it. Everyone's been waiting. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Waiting for what? You'll see. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin. Just go stand by the table. Where's the cake, Amanda? Later, she said dismissively. Sarah, what is this? She didn't answer. She just kept walking, pulling me forward through the silent crowd. 200 people parted like the Red Sea as we passed. Nobody said happy birthday. Nobody smiled. Nobody looked happy to see me. And then I was standing alone at the front of the room, facing that long table, with 200 faces staring at me in absolute silence. My father rose slowly from his chair. He picked up a microphone, the kind they use at weddings for speeches and toasts. The sound system crackled to life. Thank you all for coming today. His voice echoed through the room, amplified and cold. Our family needs to address an important matter. I scanned the crowd desperately and found Aunt Rebecca in the back corner. Her face was pale with dread, her eyes full of warning. For 32 years, my father continued, turning to face me directly. Your mother and I raised you. We fed you, clothed you, paid for your education, gave you every advantage. Everything. Dad. My throat was desert dry. What's going on? Be quiet. His voice cracked like a whip. I'm not finished. The room was absolutely silent. 200 people barely breathing, watching this unfold like it was dinner theater. My father reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick stack of papers. He held them up high like a prosecutor presenting evidence. This, he said, is a detailed accounting of every single dollar we spent on you from the day you were born until the day you moved out. My heart stopped. Food, medical bills, school supplies, birthday presents, every single expense. He flipped to the last page, running his finger down to the final number. The total comes to $420,000. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Shocked whispers. Someone gasped. $420,000, my father repeated. His eyes locked on mine with something that looked almost like hatred. That we wasted on a daughter who turned her back on this family. I stood there, frozen in shock, unable to process what was happening. But I had no idea yet just how much worse it was about to get. Because my mother was about to do something that would haunt me forever. I didn't turn my back on anyone, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My father's expression didn't change. You have two choices, Sarah. Pay back every single cent of that $420,000. He paused, letting the impossible sink in. Or sign away your claim to your grandmother's house. The room seemed to tilt. My claim to what? Don't play stupid. His voice was sharp. The lawyer sent you a letter. We know he did. I haven't even opened it yet. I haven't read it. Doesn't matter. He slid a thick document across the table toward me. Sign this. Give up any claim to the house, and we'll forget all about this bill. That's when my mother stood up. That's when everything got so much worse. She walked slowly to the wall of family photographs. I'd grown up staring at that wall my entire life. Generations of Mitchells captured in gleaming frames. My grandparents' wedding day. My parents' honeymoon in Italy. Amanda's ballet recital. My high school graduation. Holidays and birthdays stretching back decades. My mother reached up with trembling hands and pulled down the first photograph. Me at 5 years old, missing my 2 front teeth, grinning at the camera with pure joy. 32 years, she said, her voice trembling with what sounded like grief but couldn't possibly be grief. 32 years of raising an ungrateful child. She ripped the photograph in half. The sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot, echoing off the walls. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't process what I was seeing. She grabbed another frame. My high school graduation cap and gown holding my scholarship certificate. A daughter who only ever thought of herself. Rip. My nursing school diploma photo, me in my scrubs, exhausted but proud after my first clinical rotation. Who never appreciated a single thing we gave her. Rip. Then she reached for the photograph that made my heart completely stop. Me and Grandma Eleanor taken just 1 week before she died. Both of us smiling, her fragile hand wrapped around mine. Love radiating from that simple image. A daughter, my mother said, her voice rising, who manipulated a dying old woman for her own gain. Rip. The pieces fluttered to the floor like autumn leaves. Like confetti. Like my entire childhood was nothing more than garbage to be discarded. 200 people watched in complete silence. Not one person moved. Not one person objected. Not one person stood up and said, "This is wrong." Then Amanda was suddenly there beside me. She reached into my purse without asking, without permission, and pulled out my car keys. She dangled them in front of my face with a triumphant smile. Oh, and this. She jingled the keys. Dad already transferred the title to my name. I need it way more than you do anyway. I looked at my mother, surrounded by the torn fragments of my childhood. At my father, his hand still resting on that stack of lies masquerading as bills. At my sister, my car keys clutched in her fist like a prize. At 200 relatives who had watched my family try to erase my existence, and done absolutely nothing to stop it. I could have cried right there. I could have collapsed. I could have begged them to stop, to explain, to tell me what I'd done to deserve this public execution. I did none of those things. I took a deep breath. Then another. Grandma Eleanor's voice echoed in my mind, clear as a bell. You are enough, Sarah. You always were. I looked directly at my father. Really looked at him, past the anger, past the performance. I saw the desperation behind his rage. The way his hand shook ever so slightly on that stack of papers. Dad. My voice came out calm, steadier than I felt. Have you actually read Grandma's will yourself? He blinked, caught off guard. What? Her will. The actual legal document. Have you personally read it? I don't need to read it. The house was supposed to go to the family. To all of us. Are you absolutely sure about that? Something flickered across his face then. Doubt maybe. Or fear. You're asking me to sign away legal rights you haven't even verified. I kept my voice level, professional, like I was explaining treatment options to a patient. That's not how legal documents work, Dad. From the back of the room, I saw Aunt Rebecca give me a small nod of encouragement. I turned to Amanda. How much do you actually owe? Exactly. Her face went white as paper. What? The cryptocurrency investments. Kyle's quote-unquote sure thing. How deep in debt are you really? I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do, Amanda. Whispers erupted through the crowd like wildfire. Confused glances. People shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The script my parents had written was falling apart. My mother stepped forward quickly, trying to regain control. This isn't about Amanda. This is about you being selfish, Sarah. No. I held up my hand. This is about you trying to take something that might not even be yours without bothering to verify the basic facts first. Silence crashed down again. I looked at the torn photographs scattered at my mother's feet, at my car keys still clutched in Amanda's trembling fist, at my father's carefully itemized accounting of everything I'd supposedly cost him just by being born. Then I looked at the door. I won't sign anything tonight, I said clearly. And I certainly won't sign anything under duress while being publicly humiliated in front of 200 people. My father slammed his palm down on the table. The sound made several people jump. Sign the paper, Sarah. Right now. Or you're no longer a Mitchell. I stood absolutely still for a long moment, looking at those 200 faces staring back at me. Some curious. Some pitying. Most just eager to see what would happen next, like they were watching a reality show. This was their entertainment for the evening. My humiliation served up like dinner theater. I reached up slowly and touched the bracelet on my wrist. Grandma Eleanor's bracelet, the one she'd given me the day before she died. Her mother had given it to her, and her mother before that. 3 generations of strong women. I carefully unclasped it and slipped it into my pocket, close to my heart. They didn't deserve to see it. They hadn't earned the right. I will not sign anything tonight, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. I will not make legal decisions while being publicly ambushed and humiliated. And I absolutely will not stand here 1 second longer, while you try to erase me from this family like I never existed. My mother's face contorted with rage. How dare you speak to us like this? After everything we've done for you. You've torn my photographs off your wall. My voice didn't waver. Dad's demanded $400,000 for the crime of raising me. Amanda's stolen my car. You've invited 200 people to watch you destroy me. I have nothing left to lose here. I turned and walked toward the door with my head held high. Nobody stopped me. Nobody reached out. Nobody said wait or please or I'm sorry or happy birthday. 200 people, and not a single one spoke a word. Marcus's car was waiting exactly where he'd promised, 2 blocks away. I climbed into the passenger seat without looking back, without letting myself feel anything yet. You okay? His voice was so gentle. No. I stared straight ahead at nothing. But I will be. Eventually. He pulled away from the curb, and my parents' house shrank in the rearview mirror until it disappeared completely around a corner. I didn't know it then, but walking out that door was the best decision I would ever make in my entire life. It just took 4 days for my family to realize what they'd actually done. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between your peace and keeping others happy? Where you finally said enough? Sometimes the hardest thing in the world is walking away, but sometimes it's the only thing that saves us. Marcus took me home that night and stayed on my couch, refusing to leave me alone. By morning, my phone had become a weapon. And what I discovered in the next 4 days would change absolutely everything. He paused. Marcus stayed on my couch that entire night, refusing to leave me alone. Neither of us slept much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother ripping those photographs. I heard that terrible tearing sound echoing in my head. By morning, my phone had exploded into chaos. 47 missed calls from my father, 33 from my mother, 21 text messages from Amanda, each one more frantic and desperate than the last. Call me back. It's urgent. Sarah, please. We need to talk. You're being ridiculous. This is serious. The extended family was even worse. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly texting me. How could you treat your parents like that? Your grandmother would be ashamed of you. Selfish. I always knew you were selfish. I turned off my phone and set it face down on my kitchen counter like it was radioactive. Marcus made coffee. Strong black, exactly the way I liked it during long night shifts at the hospital. He didn't ask questions. He didn't try to fix anything. He just sat with me in the quiet, and sometimes that's all you need. Just someone who stays. They only know one side of the story, he finally said. They don't want to know any other side, I replied quietly. That afternoon, I pulled out Grandma Eleanor's memory box, the one she'd given me during her final weeks, filled with letters and old photographs and tiny treasures from her life. I'd been too heartbroken to go through most of it after she died. At the very bottom, underneath everything else, I found an envelope I'd never opened before. My name written in her shaky, beautiful handwriting. Inside was a single page. Her final letter to me, the one I'd been too afraid to read. My dearest Sarah, it began. By now, you've probably discovered that things aren't going the way your parents expected them to. Don't worry, sweetheart. I've taken care of absolutely everything. They will try to take what I've left you. Don't let them. Mr. Whitmore knows everything. Trust him completely. You are enough, my darling girl. You always were. I read those words 3 times, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. She'd known. Even before she died, even during those final pain-filled days, she'd known exactly what my family would try to do. And she'd prepared for it. She'd protected me even after death. I looked at Marcus, tears streaming down my face. I think I need to see that lawyer right now. The next morning, I walked into Gerald Whitmore's office building. It was older than I expected, with marble floors and dark wood paneling that smelled like history and important decisions. Mr. Whitmore himself was silver-haired and kind, with the patient expression of someone who'd seen every possible family drama and somehow still believed in human goodness. Miss Mitchell. He stood to shake my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. I've been waiting for you. You know what happened? My voice cracked. At the party? Your grandmother predicted it almost word for word, I'm afraid. He gestured to a leather chair. Please sit down. He pulled a thick document from his desk drawer. Heavy paper. Official seals. Notarized signatures. The will. Your grandmother left her house to you, Sarah. Not to the family. Not to be divided among relatives. To you and only you. The words felt impossible, like they were in a foreign language. Just me? But why? Because you were the only one who was actually there. His voice softened with genuine emotion. 3 years, Miss Mitchell. You gave up your career, your apartment, your entire life to care for her during the hardest time imaginable. Nobody else even visited regularly. I stared at the document, at my grandmother's signature at the bottom, that handwriting I knew better than my own. The house is currently valued at approximately $650,000, Whitmore continued. It's yours free and clear. Nobody can take it from you, no matter what they say or do. But my father said that Grandma would have wanted. Your father assumed. Whitmore leaned back in his chair. He never actually read the will. He just assumed your grandmother would divide her estate equally like most people do. She didn't. She made a very deliberate choice. She knew them, I whispered. She really knew what they were like. She knew all of you, Whitmore said gently. That's precisely why she made the decision she did. Pulling out another document. There's one more thing, Sarah. A specific condition your grandmother included in the will. My heart started pounding. What kind of condition? If any family member attempts to coerce, threaten, manipulate, or publicly humiliate you into surrendering your inheritance, they automatically forfeit any claim to her remaining assets. He smiled slightly. Your grandmother was an extraordinarily smart woman. Before I could fully process that, the office door opened behind me. I turned to find Aunt Rebecca standing in the doorway, her expression sad and soft and somehow relieved all at once. Hello, sweetheart. Aunt Rebecca? I half rose from my chair, confused. What are you doing here? She crossed the room and sat in the chair beside mine, reaching over to take my hand. Your grandmother asked me to be here when this moment came. Whitmore nodded. Mrs. Henderson served as a witness when Eleanor drafted this will. She was present for every single decision. I looked between them, my mind spinning. You knew this whole time? Everything. I knew. Rebecca squeezed my fingers gently. Your grandmother called me 3 years ago, right after you moved in with her. She said, and I remember her exact words, Catherine will never accept this. Sarah will need someone in her corner. Tears burned in my eyes. Why didn't you tell me before? Eleanor made me promise not to. She wanted you to know her love was completely unconditional, not based on any expectation of inheritance. Rebecca's own eyes were wet. She said you were the only one who loved her for herself, not for what she could give you. The rest of your family, Whitmore added, was informed of the will's existence, but not its specific contents. They assumed they knew what it said. They were wrong. I thought of my mother tearing those photographs off the wall with theatrical rage. My father's absurd $400,000 bill. Amanda's triumphant smile as, continue. 12:33 p.m. She took my car keys. All of it based on a complete lie they told themselves. Your grandmother's last wish, Rebecca said, her voice breaking, was for you to know that you are enough, Sarah. You always were. You never needed anyone's permission to matter in this world. I cried then. Really cried for the first time since that terrible birthday. But these weren't tears of grief or humiliation. They were tears of relief, of vindication, of love that had survived even death itself. By the second day after my birthday, the phone calls had become absolutely desperate. I turned my phone back on just long enough to count the damage. 62 missed calls from my father, 48 from my mother, and one very long voicemail from Amanda. Her voice cracking with what might have been panic or might have been fury. Sarah, the lawyer, called us. There's been some kind of terrible mistake with the will. You need to call me back right now. Right now. I played it for Marcus while we sat in my kitchen drinking coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Mistake. Marcus snorted. That's what they're calling it now? The text messages were even more revealing. Each one more pathetic than the last. From my father. We need to talk immediately. There's been a serious misunderstanding about the will. From my mother. Sarah, please answer. This isn't what we wanted. We can fix this. From Amanda. The lawyer says you're the only heir listed in the will. That cannot possibly be right. Call me. I showed Marcus the screen, and he shook his head in disgust. Funny how misunderstanding is suddenly their favorite word when things don't go their way. They were perfectly clear 2 nights ago, I said bitterly. No misunderstanding then when they were destroying my photographs in front of 200 people. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my father. We're family, Sarah. Don't let some legal document come between us. I read it twice, then actually laughed. A hollow broken sound that didn't feel like it came from me. Legal documents didn't come between us, Dad, I said to the empty screen. You did that all by yourself when you read that fake bill in front of 200 people and tried to publicly destroy me. Marcus gently took the phone from my hands. You don't have to respond to any of this. I know, I said. But part of me wants to. Part of me wants to scream every truth I've swallowed for 32 years straight into their faces. Silence is more powerful, Marcus said quietly. Some battles aren't won with words. They're won by refusing to play the game at all. He was right. But silence wasn't going to be enough for my family. They were used to me being quiet, being obedient, being invisible. On the 3rd day, they showed up at my apartment door. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who expect our forgiveness the fastest. They expect us to forget, to move on, to pretend it never happened. But some wounds don't heal just because someone decides they're ready to stop talking about it. I was alone when they came. Marcus had gone back to his apartment just 2 floors up. And what happened at my door that afternoon would force me to make a choice I never thought I'd have to make. I was completely alone when the knocking started. 3 sharp raps that made my heart jump into my throat. I checked the peephole and saw them standing there like some kind of twisted family portrait. My father, my mother, Amanda. All 3 of them in my hallway. I opened the door but didn't step aside. Didn't invite them in. Just stood there in my own doorway like a guard. Sarah. My father's voice had changed completely. Softer now, almost pleading. We really need to talk. Please. So talk. My mother wrung her hands together. Sweetheart, the other night I got carried away. I was emotional and upset. I didn't mean any of it. You tore my childhood photographs off the wall, Mom. My voice was steady, calmer than I felt inside. You ripped them up one by one in front of 200 people while calling me ungrateful. I didn't mean it like that. You called me manipulative while you destroyed the picture of me with Grandma. Was that also an accident? Silence hung heavy in the hallway. Amanda pushed forward, desperation written all over her face. Sarah, please listen. I'm in real trouble here. Serious trouble. If I can't come up with the money soon, then you'll face the consequences of your own choices, I interrupted. Your choices, Amanda. Not mine. Her face went red. You don't understand. Kyle and I made bad investments. We could lose everything. I know, I said evenly. That's not my problem to solve. That's not my emergency to fix. My father tried to straighten up, trying desperately to regain some kind of control over the situation. That house should belong to the whole family. Your grandmother would have wanted all of us to share it equally. Grandmother wanted me to have it. My voice didn't waver. That's why she put my name in the will, Dad. Not yours. Not Mom's. Not Amanda's. Mine. You're being incredibly selfish about this. You publicly disowned me on my birthday, I said quietly. You demanded $420,000 for the crime of being born into this family. You watched your other daughter literally steal my car keys from my hand. I paused, looking each of them in the eye. And now you have the audacity to stand at my door and tell me that I'm being selfish? Do you hear yourselves? We are family, my mother insisted. No. That's not how any of this works. My father's phone suddenly rang, cutting through the tension. He glanced at the screen and something flickered across his face. Annoyance, maybe. Or dread. Or fear. I have to take this. He answered without stepping away from my doorway. Barbara, now really isn't a good. I could hear Aunt Barbara's voice through the speaker, loud and angry and utterly unforgiving. Richard, I just got off the phone with Gerald Whitmore. He told me everything. My father's jaw tightened visibly. Barbara, please. He says Sarah is the sole beneficiary of Eleanor's estate. That Eleanor left her everything. Is that actually true? It's more complicated than. And he mentioned something else very interesting, Aunt Barbara continued, her voice sharp as a knife. Something about a coercion clause. That if anyone tries to force Sarah to give up her inheritance through threats or public humiliation, they automatically lose their own claims to any remaining assets. My mother's face went absolutely gray. Richard, Aunt Barbara's voice cracked with pure disgust. Please tell me you didn't publicly disown your own daughter over a house that was never yours to begin with. That's not what happened. You don't understand. I was there, Richard. Her voice rose. I watched Catherine tear those photographs off the wall like some kind of villain in a movie. I watched you read that ridiculous itemized bill. I saw everything. My father's hand shook. The phone trembled against his ear. The entire family is talking, Barbara continued, ice cold now. 200 people saw what you did. And now everyone knows the truth about what kind of people you really are. Barbara, please, you have to understand. You tried to humiliate your own daughter into giving up her legal inheritance, Barbara said slowly, making sure every word landed like a hammer. And you didn't even bother to check if you had any legal claim to it at all. You just assumed. And you made absolute fools of yourselves. She paused. No one is on your side anymore, Richard. Not after this. She hung up. The silence that followed was deafening. The four of us stood frozen in my doorway. My mother had gone pale as paper. Amanda looked like she might actually cry or vomit or both. My father stared at his phone as if it had personally betrayed him. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. I think, I said very quietly, you should all leave now. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. My father pocketed his phone with shaking hands. When he finally looked up at me, his expression had changed one more time. The anger was completely gone now. In its place was something I had never ever seen on my father's face before. Raw desperation. Sarah. His voice was so much smaller now. I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. Can we please just talk about this like rational adults? I studied his face carefully. Are you sorry because you were actually wrong? Or are you just sorry because everyone found out what you did? He didn't answer. He couldn't. That's exactly what I thought. My mother pushed past him, tears streaming down her face in rivers. Sarah, please. Amanda needs help. She's your sister. If she loses everything. If she loses everything, I said calmly, then she loses everything. She's a grown woman, Mom. She made her own choices. She has to live with the consequences. You heartless, Amanda started. I'm your sister, she shouted, fists clenched at her sides. And you took my car keys out of my hand while our mother systematically destroyed every photograph of my childhood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You don't get to play the family card after doing that to me, Amanda. You just don't. My father tried one last time. The house belongs with the family. That's what your grandmother truly would have wanted deep down. Grandmother wanted me to have it. She put it in writing. She hired a lawyer. She had witnesses sign documents. She planned for exactly this scenario. I straightened my shoulders. That's not an opinion, Dad. That's a documented legal fact. So you're just going to keep everything? All of it? Keep it all for yourself. I'm going to honor grandmother's wishes exactly as she specified them in her will. He stared at me for a long, heavy moment. Then something inside him seemed to just break apart completely. Fine. His voice went cold and dead. Don't come crawling back to us when you finally realize what you've thrown away by being stubborn. I won't, I said firmly. I'm not abandoning family here, Dad. I'm just finally done being treated like I don't exist at all. Like I never existed in the first place. I stepped back and put my hand on the door. Goodbye. I closed the door in their faces and locked it. I stood there with my back against the wood, listening to their footsteps fade down the hallway, waiting for my heart to stop racing. Took a long time. The fourth day, I returned to Mr. Whitmore's office. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, catching dust particles in the air and making them glow like tiny stars. Everything felt calmer now, clearer, like I could finally breathe properly again. I've made my final decision, I said, settling into that familiar leather chair. I want to keep the house. I'm not selling it. Whitmore nodded, already pulling out a fresh stack of documents. What would you like to do with it? Grandmother always said she wanted it to be a peaceful place. Somewhere quiet and safe where people could heal. I paused, remembering all those conversations on her porch at sunset. I'll keep it exactly as she left it. Liven it. Take care of it the way she would have wanted. A very fitting tribute to her memory. I signed the ownership transfer papers with a completely steady hand. Each signature felt like a small victory, like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost years ago. There's one more matter to address, Whitmore said, sliding another document across the polished desk. Regarding the vehicle. I'd almost forgotten about the car and all the chaos. Your father had absolutely no legal authority to transfer the title to your sister. The vehicle was registered in your name, purchased entirely with your own funds. The transfer he attempted was completely invalid. What does that mean exactly? It means we can file a formal complaint and have the registration corrected immediately. He leaned back in his chair. Essentially, we get your car back. For the first time in days, I felt something close to a real smile. Let's do that. As I signed the last paper, I looked up at him. Mr. Whitmore, did my grandmother ever say anything specific about my family before she died? He was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. Then he smiled gently. She said, "They won't understand my choices, but Sarah will. And that's more than enough for me." My eyes burned with tears. She really knew them, didn't she? She saw right through all of them. She knew all of you, he said softly. Every single one. That's precisely why she made the choices she did. I left his office that afternoon with the deed safely in my hands, and something like peace settling into my heart. The hardest part was finally over. The healing could begin. Within just 1 week, the fallout from that birthday party had spread like wildfire through every corner of our extended family and community. The 200 people who'd witnessed my public humiliation had started talking. And talking. And talking some more. News travels fast in families. It travels even faster when there's scandal and shame involved. I heard about it all from Aunt Rebecca, who called me every few days now to check on me. Your parents' friends are distancing themselves, she told me one evening. The Hendersons canceled their standing dinner date. The Watsons stopped returning their calls entirely. The Jeffersons uninvited them from their annual holiday party. I never asked for any of that, I said quietly. You didn't have to ask, sweetheart. People saw what they did to you. They drew their own conclusions about what kind of people your parents really are. The consequences got worse. My father's real estate company had always depended entirely on reputation, on trust, on the carefully crafted image of being a solid family man making solid deals. One of his biggest clients, a developer named Martinez who'd worked with him for 15 years, pulled out of a massive $50 million contract. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. I think, I said very quietly, you should all leave now. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. My father pocketed his phone with shaking hands. When he finally looked up at me, his expression had changed one more time. The anger was completely gone now. In its place was something I had never ever seen on my father's face before. Raw desperation. Sarah. His voice was so much smaller now. I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. Can we please just talk about this like rational adults? I studied his face carefully. Are you sorry because you were actually wrong? Or are you just sorry because everyone found out what you did? He didn't answer. He couldn't. That's exactly what I thought. My mother pushed past him, tears streaming down her face in rivers. Sarah, please. Amanda needs help. She's your sister. If she loses everything. If she loses everything, I said calmly, then she loses everything. She's a grown woman, Mom. She made her own choices. She has to live with the consequences. You heartless, Amanda started. I'm your sister, she shouted, fists clenched at her sides. And you took my car keys out of my hand while our mother systematically destroyed every photograph of my childhood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You don't get to play the family card after doing that to me, Amanda. You just don't. My father tried one last time. The house belongs with the family. That's what your grandmother truly would have wanted deep down. Grandmother wanted me to have it. She put it in writing. She hired a lawyer. She had witnesses sign documents. She planned for exactly this scenario. I straightened my shoulders. That's not an opinion, Dad. That's a documented legal fact. So you're just going to keep everything? All of it? Keep it all for yourself. I'm going to honor grandmother's wishes exactly as she specified them in her will. He stared at me for a long, heavy moment. Then something inside him seemed to just break apart completely. Fine. His voice went cold and dead. Don't come crawling back to us when you finally realize what you've thrown away by being stubborn. I won't, I said firmly. I'm not abandoning family here, Dad. I'm just finally done being treated like I don't exist at all. Like I never existed in the first place. I stepped back and put my hand on the door. Goodbye. I closed the door in their faces and locked it. I stood there with my back against the wood, listening to their footsteps fade down the hallway, waiting for my heart to stop racing. Took a long time. The fourth day, I returned to Mr. Whitmore's office. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, catching dust particles in the air and making them glow like tiny stars. Everything felt calmer now, clearer, like I could finally breathe properly again. I've made my final decision, I said, settling into that familiar leather chair. I want to keep the house. I'm not selling it. Whitmore nodded, already pulling out a fresh stack of documents. What would you like to do with it? Grandmother always said she wanted it to be a peaceful place. Somewhere quiet and safe where people could heal. I paused, remembering all those conversations on her porch at sunset. I'll keep it exactly as she left it. Live in it. Take care of it the way she would have wanted. A very fitting tribute to her memory. I signed the ownership transfer papers with a completely steady hand. Each signature felt like a small victory, like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost years ago. There's one more matter to address, Whitmore said, sliding another document across the polished desk. Regarding the vehicle. I'd almost forgotten about the car and all the chaos. Your father had absolutely no legal authority to transfer the title to your sister. The vehicle was registered in your name, purchased entirely with your own funds. The transfer he attempted was completely invalid. What does that mean exactly? It means we can file a formal complaint and have the registration corrected immediately. He leaned back in his chair. Essentially, we get your car back. For the first time in days, I felt something close to a real smile. Let's do that. As I signed the last paper, I looked up at him. Mr. Whitmore, did my grandmother ever say anything specific about my family before she died? He was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. Then he smiled gently. She said, "They won't understand my choices, but Sarah will. And that's more than enough for me." My eyes burned with tears. She really knew them, didn't she? She saw right through all of them. "She knew all of you," he said softly. "Every single one. That's precisely why she made the choices she did." I left his office that afternoon with the deed safely in my hands, and something like peace settling into my heart. The hardest part was finally over. The healing could begin. Within just 1 week, the fallout from that birthday party had spread like wildfire through every corner of our extended family and community. The 200 people who'd witnessed my public humiliation had started talking. And talking. And talking some more. News travels fast in families. It travels even faster when there's scandal and shame involved. I heard about it all from Aunt Rebecca, who called me every few days now to check on me. "Your parents' friends are distancing themselves," she told me one evening. The Hendersons canceled their standing dinner date. The Watsons stopped returning their calls entirely. The Jeffersons uninvited them from their annual holiday party. "I never asked for any of that," I said quietly. "You didn't have to ask, sweetheart. People saw what they did to you. They drew their own conclusions about what kind of people your parents really are." The consequences got worse. My father's real estate company had always depended entirely on reputation, on trust, on the carefully crafted image of being a solid family man making solid deals. One of his biggest clients, a developer named Martinez who'd worked with him for 15 years, pulled out of a massive $50 million contract. "Heard what happened at your daughter's birthday party," Martinez reportedly said. "I don't do business with people who treat their own family that way. What does that say about how they'll treat me?" My mother's carefully constructed social circles crumbled just as quickly and just as completely. She'd been a member of the same charity board for 20 years, one of the most prestigious positions in town. They quietly removed her from the committee without warning. "We need board members who truly align with our values of compassion and family," the chairwoman told her coldly. When Rebecca told me all of this, I didn't feel triumphant or vindicated. I just felt tired, sad, empty. "They did this entirely to themselves," Marcus said when I shared the news with him over coffee. "You didn't post anything online. You didn't tell your story publicly. You didn't spread gossip or rumors. They were the ones who invited 200 witnesses to watch them try to destroy you." He was absolutely right. The truth has a way of speaking for itself, louder than any words ever could. I didn't need to defend myself or explain what happened. My silence was more powerful than anything I could have possibly said. But while my parents dealt with their social and professional consequences, Amanda was facing something infinitely worse. Something I heard about from Aunt Rebecca a month later. We were sitting on my apartment balcony, drinking tea in the autumn sunlight. Rebecca had become a regular, comforting presence in my life now. The family connection I'd always desperately wished I'd had. "Amanda had to sell her house," Rebecca said quietly, her voice heavy with something like pity. I set down my teacup carefully. "Sell it." She and Kyle couldn't make the mortgage payments anymore. The cryptocurrency debt finally caught up with them. Everything collapsed. Rebecca sighed deeply. "They've moved back in with your parents. All their things crammed into the guest room like they're teenagers again." I tried to feel satisfaction about it. Vindication. Instead, I just felt hollow and sad. "Your mother blames absolutely everyone except herself and Amanda, of course," Ruth continued. "The economy. The market. Bad luck. You, mostly you." She stirred her tea absently. "She's telling anyone who will listen that if only you had shared the inheritance like a good daughter, none of this would have happened to Amanda. The inheritance wouldn't have even covered Amanda's debts anyway," I said flatly. "Not even close. I know that. You know that. Your mother will never, ever admit it." I watched a cardinal land on the balcony railing. Grandmother had absolutely loved cardinals. She used to say they were visits from people who loved us who'd passed on. Do you regret any of it? Rebecca asked carefully after a moment. I thought about it for a long time before answering. Really thought about it. I regret that they never saw me as part of the family. That nothing I ever did was good enough. That I could have cured cancer and they still would have found something to criticize. I paused. But I don't regret standing up for myself anymore. Not even a little bit. Not anymore. Rebecca reached over and squeezed my hand tightly. Eleanor would be so incredibly proud of you, Sarah. I really hope so. We sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink lower in the sky, painting everything gold and orange and beautiful. Amanda's debt was never, ever my responsibility. But somehow, for 32 years my family had made me feel like everything wrong in their lives was somehow my fault. Not anymore. 2 weeks later I got my car back through the legal process. It had been surprisingly simple once the paperwork was filed. Mr. Whitmore proved that the title transfer was invalid, that the vehicle had been registered in my name and purchased with my money. My father had no authority whatsoever to give it away like it was his to give. A police officer actually accompanied me to my parents' house to retrieve it. I'd been dreading this moment for days. Another confrontation. Another ugly scene. Another battle. But when we pulled up, the house looked smaller somehow. Less imposing. Less frightening. Just a house. Amanda met us at the front door. Her face was drawn, exhausted, aged. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in just 6 weeks. She held out my car keys without saying a single word, without meeting my eyes. Thank you, I said, and I genuinely meant it. For just one brief moment, something flickered in her eyes. Shame maybe. Regret. Understanding. But then her expression hardened like concrete, and she turned away, disappearing back into the house without another word. I didn't see my parents. I didn't want to. I didn't need to. As I walked to my car, a voice called out from behind me. Sarah, wait. I turned around. Aunt Rebecca stood on the front steps, having come out through the side door. Are you okay? She asked gently. I looked at the house where I'd grown up. The windows I used to stare out of as a child, dreaming of being seen. The front yard where I played alone while Amanda had friends over. The door I'd walked through 1,000 times, always hoping this time would be different. I'm learning how to be okay, I said honestly. That's enough for now. Rebecca smiled, her eyes wet with tears. That's more than enough, sweetheart. I climbed into my car and started the engine. The familiar hum settled something deep in my chest. Something that had been unsettled for years. Getting my car back wasn't really about the car at all. It was about taking back what was mine, including my dignity, including my self-respect, including my life. I pulled out of that driveway for the absolute last time, watching it shrink in my rearview mirror until it disappeared around a corner. I didn't look back. Not even once. 1 month later, I finally moved into grandmother's house. The little place on the edge of town felt completely different now. Quieter. More peaceful. More mine. More like home than anywhere had ever felt. I spent the first week cleaning and organizing, letting her presence settle around me like the warmest blanket imaginable. I kept her favorite chair positioned by the window where she used to sit every morning. Her tea set stayed in the kitchen exactly where she'd left it. The bird feeder she'd filled religiously every single morning for 40 years stayed right where it was, and I filled it every morning just like she had. Some things I changed carefully, reverently. Fresh paint in the bedroom in soft colors she would have loved. New curtains in the living room that let in more light. Small touches that made the space feel like both of us together, like we were sharing it across time itself. Once I was completely settled, once everything felt right, I sat down and wrote one final message to my parents. Took me 3 hours to write. I revised it a dozen times. I don't hate any of you, but I cannot and will not continue being treated like I don't exist, like I never mattered. You publicly disowned me in front of 200 people on my birthday. You demanded payment for the crime of raising me. You stood by and watched while my photographs were torn off the wall and did nothing to stop it. These aren't things I can simply forget just because you've decided it's convenient. If there ever comes a day when you want a real relationship with me, not based on money or houses or obligation, but on genuine care and respect, you know exactly how to reach me. Until that day comes, I need distance. Please respect that boundary. I hit send and immediately turned off my phone. No one replied. Not my father. Not my mother. Not Amanda. I wasn't even a little bit surprised. Part of me was relieved. In the weeks and months that followed, I slowly, carefully built an entirely new life for myself. Marcus came over every single Saturday for dinner, and we cooked together and laughed and didn't talk about my family at all. Aunt Rebecca visited every Sunday afternoon, and we sat on the porch exactly where grandmother used to sit. My co-workers from the hospital became closer friends than I'd ever allowed them to be before because I'd always been so closed off, so afraid. I wasn't alone anymore. I had family now. They just weren't related to me by blood. And somehow that made them infinitely more precious, infinitely more real. I stood on grandmother's porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the entire sky in shades of orange and gold and pink. I held her last letter in my hands, the paper soft from being read so many times. I'm figuring it out, Grandma, I whispered to the evening air. Just like you always said I would. 3 months later, I sat in grandmother's favorite chair with her final letter resting in my lap. The paper had grown so soft from all my readings that it felt like silk. The ink was starting to fade in places from my tears and my touches. But those final words still hit me with the same force as the very first time I'd read them. Live like you deserve to, sweetheart. For 32 years, I've been waiting desperately for my family to see me, to value me, to love me the way I loved them with my whole heart. I'd shrunk myself down to almost nothing to fit their impossible expectations. I'd silenced my own voice to keep their peace. I'd given up pieces of my soul every single time I let their cruelty slide past without saying a word. It took being publicly disowned and humiliated on my birthday, in front of 200 people to finally understand the truth. I never needed their permission to matter. I never needed their approval to have worth. I never needed them to see me for me to exist. Grandmother knew that truth. She'd always known it. That's why she left me the house. Not because of the money. Not because of the property value. Not because of anything material at all. She left it to me because she wanted me to have proof. Physical, undeniable, legally binding proof that someone in my family had truly seen me all along. That someone had loved me exactly as I was. That I had always been enough. I wasn't the ungrateful daughter they painted me as for 32 years. I wasn't the burden or the disappointment or the failure. I was the one who showed up when it mattered. The one who stayed when everyone else left. The one who loved without conditions or expectations or demands. And that was enough. That was always enough. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in colors grandmother would have absolutely loved. Somewhere in the trees behind the house, a bird was singing the most beautiful song. I miss you, Grandma, I said to the empty chair beside me, the one I could never bring myself to sit in. Every single day. Every single moment. The breeze picked up gently, rustling through the autumn leaves like a whisper, like an answer, like love reaching across the boundary between worlds. I folded the letter carefully and pressed it against my heart. Thank you, I whispered, my voice breaking. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for giving me permission to finally choose myself. After all, that's what she'd really left me. Not a house. Not money. Not property. Permission. Permission to exist. Permission to matter. Permission to be enough exactly as I was. That's my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but I hope with my whole heart that it helps someone out there who's going through something similar right now. Here's what I learned through all of this pain. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. Walking away isn't cruel. Sometimes it's the only way to survive with your soul intact. Sometimes choosing yourself is the bravest thing you can possibly do. If this story touched your heart, if it resonated with something you've experienced, please like and subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Check the description for more stories like this one about finding your strength and reclaiming your life. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. Thank you for seeing me. I'll see you in the next one.